Welcome to Behind the SME, the podcast where we dive into the stories of founders, leaders, and visionaries of small and medium-sized enterprises. As the CEO of a small business myself, I want to uncover what drives the success of SMEs by talking to those who are in the trenches, building their businesses from the ground up. I hope you enjoy the episode. Leanne, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I normally start by explaining how we met. And we met through a former guest of ours called Alex Merry, founder of Mic Drop. How do you know Alex?
I was introduced to Alex when I started doing talks for companies and joined Mic Drop as well. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really, really great.
Yeah, I concur. And a good episode to listen to if you're new to the podcast, because his was very popular and lots of good takeaways. But this isn't about Alex. This is about you. And I am very excited to get into learning a little bit more about what you've been doing. I think the business that you run is fascinating. And also your journey to get to running that business is really, really interesting. So why don't you give us a bit of an understanding of what your early career looked like and how it led to what you're doing today?
Yeah, thank you. I will try not to go on tangents because my career started at the age of 13. So I basically started modelling then. I was living in Cyprus, but my mum kind of got me into modelling, so I did that throughout my childhood. And then once I came over to London, I went to uni, studied law, but again, kind of got scouted into modelling, which sounds glamorous, and it was like really, really unglamorous and difficult in terms of like having to lose weight. And I didn't really enjoy the job, but just was kind of stuck in it because you get really pulled in. Graduated from uni, had no idea what to do with my life. All jobs seemed really horrifically boring, and also like I wouldn't get hired by anyone, so I was in double bind here. Travelled around, did some modelling, and progressively got worse and worse in terms of my mental health. I spent like 5 years kind of living the worst TV show type life that you can imagine, where I would just like go out and get drunk and be like, maybe I'll move to Bali, maybe I'll move to New Zealand. That must be the answer. It was not the answer. Eventually became really suicidal as well, because I just, on the outside, it looked like I had kind of everything. And like I went to go and see doctors and they were like, you're fine, you have a law degree, you're modelling, you've got everything. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I'm just trying to figure out every day how to kill myself. So eventually came back here to the UK and I got diagnosed with ADHD, which I didn't really believe in. Definitely didn't resonate with my experiences. But a year later or so, once I finally accepted that diagnosis and understood a bit more about it, my life really dramatically changed. And I was able to get a real job in law. My proudest achievement. I did have like various jobs before, but I would just quit them all after like a week or so. So this job, it was helpful to have the ADHD diagnosis, because then I was like, right, someone else has validated that I might quit this job. So I'm going to live over the road. So I lived on Chancery Lane over the road from the office, and I stayed in that job for 2.5 years. And actually by that point I was like, actually it's quite overrated having a normal job. I was like, actually maybe it was better before. So along that journey I basically wrote a book called ADHD and A to Z, self-published that book because I just learnt more and more about ADHD once I was in this kind of neurotypical working environment, normal working environment, and could see that even though I had like taken medication, etc., there was still differences in how I was being around other people, and I really didn't want to get fired. So I wrote this book to try and help myself fit in, self-published it, and then it became very, very popular. That was about 7 years ago now. So that was also around the time of the pandemic. And since then, everyone in the world has got ADHD. And now I spend a lot of time talking about ADHD to companies like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft. And I have trained 600 ADHD and autism and ADHD coaches. I've also been diagnosed with autism. I've published 5 books. And I coach people with ADHD and autism.
And like I said at the top, a lot. You've
Sorry,
done
that
a
was
lot.
a
I mean, writing 5 books alone at your age is crazy. But yeah, I mean, what an incredible story. And there's so much I want to unpack, obviously, and we're going to focus a large part of the episode on how you've harnessed ADHD, and for the kind of managers and leaders out there, how to understand their team, members of the team that have ADHD, and how to use it for a superpower, how to make sense of it, and how to understand the working parameters and the working environment that is needed to really thrive with ADHD in the working environment. Because, you know, as you've shown and proven, it can be possible, and it is possible. So that's where we're going to spend a large portion of time. I also want to talk about your business. I want to talk about, you know, how you've come up with this amazing concept. I think I'm right in saying you've created the first and only ADHD coaching certification course.
CPD-certified. We have the only... there's one other ADHD coaching kind of big company that I trained with myself in America. This one was the first one in the UK, and then we just launched the first and only one in the world, really, which would be like autism and ADHD coaching course, which is good.
Yeah. and just so we're clear, this is coaching people so that they can coach those with ADHD better understand the differences that they might have. Is that right?
Yeah, they're both of the kind of courses that we've got that train coaches and certify them, they train them on frameworks. So these frameworks are basically like, if you think you have ADHD or you get diagnosed with ADHD or autism, like I mentioned there about me, once I got the diagnosis, or once I even kind of accepted it, I was like, right, now what am I supposed to do with this information? And I got the job, and I was like, okay, now I can force myself to be normal. But what I wanted to do was kind of bring some structure to it so people don't have to go through that. So if you are in that position, the psychiatrist, it's not their job really to explain to you like what this means for you, what does this mean for your past and your future, like how do you talk to your employer about it. They don't have time to go down the route of like, okay, here are the good bits, and here are the maybe more difficult bits and the things that you uniquely will struggle with, because these are the bits that it takes time for each individual to kind of understand. It's very, very different in every single person. And then especially with autism as well, that one was, there's a 50 to 70% crossover of autism and ADHD.
Wow.
But people could only be diagnosed with both since 2013 in the UK. So again, there are so many people that don't really realize that they've only got half the puzzle to their brain. So then the question is like, oh, am I autistic? Do I get a diagnosis? Do I go down this route, et cetera, et cetera? So I made these kind of frameworks, which are essentially a series of exercises to be able to take someone through something structured, because again, like there is such an industry around this, mainly because the official help is not there. Like the waiting lists are like 10 years long. So I actually presented to the World Health Organization on this. So I went and wrote to them, because I was like, because there's not updated information and accessible support for people are being really exploited. Like I was coaching someone this morning, and it was so nice, because when I started coaching her, she was like, she's like, what can I buy? Like, what posters do I need to get? And like, she was like, do you take lion's mane? And I was like, no, I don't. I was like, I think but it was so lovely, because over the time I've coached her, we finished today, she's now at the point where she's realizing like, oh, I don't need to outsource, like I don't need fixing. There's nothing I need to buy. Like I'm good as I am. And with me as well, she was like, oh, like our coaching is running out. And I was like, no, like, I was like, I wouldn't coach you anymore, because I was like, you don't need it. Like you've got everything sorted yourself. Like, and so for a lot of the work that I do, it's about just helping people to see that, like, it's not that there's nothing wrong with them, because being different from most people can be incredibly lonely and challenging. And there's good parts about that as well, but it is like understanding yourself in that and being like, okay, it's okay. I don't have to fit in. I don't have to like be normal. I can make my own definition of normal and work towards that.
Yeah. So let's just backtrack slightly, I would love to get a description from you about perhaps an insight into the way your brain operates. And I've read anecdotes that say an ADHD brain is like having multiple tabs on a browser open at any one time. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to live with ADHD.
It's a good time to ask me this because since making this course, which I made, the ADHD coaching course, I made it a few years ago because I needed help with the company, and I knew that how I was trained isn't how I coach, so I had to make something, but I didn't really want to give away how we train people, etc. I didn't really want to take someone on if they were just going to leave. So I made this course and now have somehow accidentally trained all these people. But then I was like, we need like a supervisor, we need some kind of oversight and support for those people we've trained. And so I needed to make a supervision course and or the same kind of thing. I didn't really expect to be doing what I'm doing. But over the last couple of years, every time I've thought about doing this, people are like, no, you can only let people do a supervision course if they've had like X number of years of experience. And I trained the supervisor myself. I trained up in a course, and then I announced it a few months ago, and now I really need to make it because we need to do it by January. Like 5 people have bought it, so I now need to like create it. So for the last 3 weeks, I've literally been trying to force myself to just create this course. But every time I sit down to do it, like I will basically either end up doing something else, have a million different ideas, end up like redoing the same. I've only done one lesson so far of like 100, and I will just redo the same lesson over and over and over again because supervision is like, it's kind of like coaching. It's like a word. It's like it's a skill that we as humans have like professionalized and attached all this meaning to, but that one can come up in so many different contexts. And this weekend I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I was like, I blocked all the social media on my phone and my laptop, and I was like, I'm just going to sit here and make the course because I know like once I start doing it, I'll be able to do it. And again, sat there, redid the lesson, got really angry with myself, and then was like, right, I need to write a book. I was like, I need to write a book. And then if I write the book, then I'll be able to understand what exactly is on my head here. And then I was like, and that book should also be, then when I started thinking about the book, I was like, supervision is essentially like trying to make people do what you want them to do. So kind of like management. So it's basically like having so many different popping associations, because I was like, it's kind of like management, kind of like what we're really doing, and why they can't go to other supervisors these people have trained is because those other supervisors that have been trained, especially for coaching, they've been trained in the style of someone should come and they should be professional, they should make eye contact, and if they don't, then there's a problem with the person, and maybe like, so they're not neurodivergent trained. So this book has now turned into a book that is going to be for neurotypical people on how to understand neurodivergent people, and it will be things like, if someone doesn't make eye contact with you, it's not because they're being rude and they don't like you, it's because they're overwhelmed because their brain is having like 500 different thoughts at the same time. And if someone is late, it's not because they don't like you again. It's or like if if you've asked someone how they are and they say I'm good, and they haven't said how about you, it doesn't mean that they don't like. It's ironic, this entire book sounds like it's going to be for neurotypical people to be like, we do like you. Don't worry. But like that, I don't know if that's a good example, but that's what it feels like. If like I started over here, I just need to go from A to B, but instead we're going to go from A to Z to like all over the place, and like probably be really, really, really stressed. I'm sure, and even now I brought my laptop with me, so when I came here, because I started writing it this morning, I was like, go, I've got it, and started writing it in the car, and so now I'm like really excited to just go and write that book, which is not what I need to do at all, but hopefully it will get me there.
Yeah.
Talk to me in January. It's really stressful.
Yeah.
I didn't intend to wake up and start writing this book, and now I'll probably end up with another book, and the world will be like, wow, 6 books at 33. And like, I didn't really intend to write this book. I just needed to get all of these million different tabs out of my brain so that I could figure out, okay, what can I take from that to teach someone else?
Yeah. And it sounds like writing is a real outlet for you because it takes disordered thoughts and it forces you to order them. And thinking is quite a fluid exercise, but when it's written, it's in a structure.
Yeah, well, the reason that I kind of really believed in that whole autism aspect was that I saw a word called hyperlexic in someone else's book, and they said because I'm hyperlexic, I will always write too much information for everyone else to understand. And I was like, what? And I went down this huge rabbit hole, and hyperlexia is basically where you process through reading and writing, but you're not necessarily understanding things in the same way that someone else like reading a book would. And it's to do with very advanced reading and writing skills, which is definitely what I have. But so that's how I managed to like get all A's in my exams, even though I didn't really listen at all or go to any lectures, etc., because I could just teach myself that information by writing it out over and over again. And then because the exams are written as well, I could write it out, but it's like it's not me sitting there thinking, what shall I write now? The same with the books. It's like I wrote the last book in like 10 days. And it's kind of more like exactly how you describe where it becomes ordered when I write it out. But inside my brain, it's just really, really overwhelming. But that's not all people with ADHD and autism. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, I think it is incredibly, incredibly overwhelming to live with because it does feel like your brain does not shut up ever. Yeah.
And, listening to you, I think the one of the key takeaways is that up until the point when you received a diagnosis, you were living without a thorough understanding of why you thought the way you thought, the way you acted, you responded in certain scenarios, and actually just observing, having an understanding of what ADHD was and involved and some of the complexities it gave you around social situations and learning and understanding in the working world forced you to kind of try to understand it better and therefore create a roadmap. And I think the overarching takeaway is you have and are learning how to harness it as opposed to fight it. And that's what my understanding is that a lot of your coaching is about. It's teaching people to see it as a positive, and there are ways of being really successful and really engaged and learning motivation and how to set goals, how to achieve certain things, not despite ADHD, but with ADHD. So talk us through some of the lessons that a neurotypical person might be able to take when interacting either in a work context or maybe in a personal context with someone with ADHD. Where do we need to give them a bit more slack or understanding? What are some common mistakes that we might make? Maybe as a manager, as a good example.
Oh, I have good ones for managers. When you first said that, I was like, I don't know. It's a very general question. And then I was like, oh no, managers, right. Managers, first one is that people with ADHD in particular, they have got what is called an interest-based nervous system.
Okay.
And I think it's similar also with autism, and they call it like bottom-up thinking. So that means that the manager is like, cool, this is what is important, X. X is important because I said so. But the person that you're managing, if they don't think that is important, like if they don't agree with you or they don't understand why, because they need it by this date for this X, Y, and Z, they're not going to be energized to do that. They're going to end up doing something else that they think is far more interesting.
Sure.
Because that interest-based nervous system is driven by novelty and adrenaline and urgency. So that's why we might do something at the very last minute, which is why I'm struggling with that supervision course right now, because I'm like, it's in January, that's 2 months away. Like, I don't need to make it right now, even though I do really need to make it right now. So having like shorter deadlines is helpful, because that's the reason why I'm trying to make it right now, that course, for example, because I need to get a CPD accredited before then. So, but because my brain's like, why should I? I'm the boss. I can do it whenever I want. So very exhausting. So you've got that. Whereas neurotypical people, and particularly like workplaces, they tend to have more of a hierarchical nature and then importance-based nervous system. So I remember my manager bless her. When I used to work, they had like the president of the company. They had a president. There was an email that went around from the president's assistant asking for like updates, and I just replied to it and said, "Oh, I think we're doing this stuff." And my manager was like, "You know, but that's not been signed off. Like, you can't just say that we're doing that to the president's assistant." And I was like, "Why not? Like, we are doing that."
That's the question.
Yeah,
and I answered it. What's wrong?
Why not?
Yeah.
And she was like, "No, because it's not been signed."
No, how it's done.
So yeah, I felt bad for her because I think I was extremely hard to manage. Like, she started after I did, and I was like, "I've set up a podcast, 2 podcasts," and she was like, "What are you talking about? Like, that's not within your job description." And I was like, "Why not? This guy set up a podcast for his committee area," and then she was like, and that's the thing. I was like, "Why not?" Like, and I wasn't kind of being rude. I was just like, I needed to understand the why. Yeah. Which now I have my own company. I really understand. Yeah. And essentially it's because I don't want you to. It's because no, it's my rules, and like these the rules that I say so, right? But when you've got someone like me, they're like, but I can do it, so why not? And she said, because no one else will know how to do it. So then I wrote a 15-page policy document and gave it to her, and I was like, "Oh, created it so everyone can set up a podcast if they want to." So it can be, and I wasn't being like insolent, but basically just genuinely not really not having that same understanding. And then I think there's the other side, because I'm kind of very aware that we don't have the same understanding. Like in my first one-to-one, I took her like 15 pages of all of the things that I'd done in that entire 2 weeks, and she was like, "What are you doing?" She was like, "I don't want this," and I was like, "Oh, it's fine. This is just how my brain works." And she was like, "I don't want to have to read." And fair enough. And then the quick chats, the bits of like, basically, it's very easy and very common. But it's like if you need to talk to someone, anyone really, I think in the workplace, try not to send them a message that says, "Are you free for a quick chat?" Like, or give them meetings they don't know about in their diary saying quick chat or catch up, because then we are going to assume that you're going to fire us, and that will make us more unproductive during that time until you tell us this random update that is just a quick chat. But like, just even providing a bit of context can be enormously helpful.
Quick chat about X.
Yeah. Or nothing bad. You're not being fired. I don't think you can ever say that too much as a manager. Like, to my employees, I'm always like, "You're not being fired." Just as a reminder, if you need to know, you're not being fired. They seem to really appreciate that.
One thing I'm interested to understand more is the ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or hyperactivity or hypertension. I always get it wrong.
Hyperactivity.
Yeah, hypertension is something to do with your muscles, right?
Hyperactive disorder.
And yet there are topics whereby someone with ADHD can tunnel vision focus on without the support of medication for a significant period of time. How is it to do with the topic or the understanding the why? Like, what's behind that?
Yeah, so ADHD is not really a deficit of attention as much of a challenge in regulating your attention.
Right, okay.
So I recently did this BBC brain scan, and it was my brain versus a woman called Zara McDermott's brain, who doesn't have ADHD. And they were doing it to show the differences when we were scrolling through like social media content. So first of all, they needed us both relaxed, and her brain, when relaxed, looked like a line. My brain, when relaxed, looked like it's a very remarkable picture. It looked like there was like an explosion. And then when she's on her phone, her brain looks a bit more like my brain, and when I'm on my phone, my brain looks kind of the same. Right. So it's interesting to see that there of how much energy there is, and that's all internal. It's not external, definitely not for me, which is one of the reasons why I was like, no, I have a real problem to the psychiatrist, because I hate PE. I'm not very like physically hyper. I would call myself very lazy. I wouldn't call myself like productive. I still do, even though I've done like a huge amount of things, but things like cleaning the house or changing my bed sheets or cleaning anything really, or cooking for myself, really, really, really hard.
Just the mundanity of them.
Yeah, because they're not exciting. They're not like there's no you just have to do it again. Like
there's no reward. It's going to be dirty again in a week. Yeah.
Or a week, like a day. Like if I wash up the cutlery, then I just have to wash it up again. Or if I cook, like my ex-boyfriend, he used to love cooking, and he would make such a huge mess, and then he would eat the food, and then he would have to clean it all up, and I was like, you've got so much pain there for like 5 minutes of happiness. And so for me, I'm kind of like, well, I'll just eat a microwave meal or ice cream for dinner, because then like I don't have to clean it. So it is a bit like having a brain that goes to the quickest solution, which isn't always the most healthy solution, and struggles with like delayed gratification. But
on the right topic, you can tunnel vision and write a book in 10 days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Easy. And that's called hyper focus. So
sure.
And that's another kind of common, you say misconception, but for people with ADHD, particularly in the workplace, managers will often be like, think that it means they need less responsibility, but actually it usually means that they need more challenging work, but less what they would call easy work, like administration. So for me, I was really good at doing like very intense reports and research, etc. My job that would have been considered difficult, in my opinion. But the admin of that was really, really, really. There was just like an updating sheet that would go around, and every single month my name would be on it, and I just could not do it for the life of me. It was just an Excel table to update this Excel table, but I honestly had to get a colleague to show me how to do it like 5 times, and it would take everyone else 2 minutes. And so that's something again that I think we've really installed into ADHD Works, which is mainly like put people in the positions that they're good at. So we did have, now we're completely like ADHD and autistic team, but we did have a neurotypical girl that was working with us, and she, so it's ironic because it works for everyone, but she wasn't so great in the emails, like it wasn't very natural. And then when I talked to her about it, she said, oh yeah, I do prefer like admin tasks involving like data and moving it, like to do with numbers. And I was like, oh, perfect. No, I hate all of that. And I was like, do that then. And she honestly, her name is Gina, she has published like many of the books. She has set up a podcast. She has set up like so many of our courses, probably like 30 different course cohorts. She figures out all of the behind the scenes, like tech stuff, etc. But she could have been in that position sending emails, like not doing a great job. So my biggest thing is like, okay, where does someone want, like, are they happy and are they good at their job? Because then they're in their kind of zone of genius. Whereas if you have them in an area where, like, if you put me in a job where, like, I don't know, any job really that is like very controlled and administrative and detailed, I don't think I would last very long. So,
and on the topic of zone of genius, which is a great expression. I don't know where it came from. Is it?
Just made it up.
Did you? Yeah. Well, it's very strong, and we should put it in your next book if it's not already in.
I think it is.
Good. Do you think that you have an understanding? One has an understanding of whether or not of their own zone of genius?
No. Not always. So that's why I do a lot within the coaching. We use a lot within this executive functioning framework for ADHD of like looking at the challenges and the strengths. And there's a great kind of personality test called VIA character survey. But I think in general, it's like what you enjoy doing and what you naturally are drawn to, which is why when I'm working with neurodivergent people and children in particular, I'm always like, just go for what you're interested in. So the same as me, it's very easy for me to like run this business because like I just mentioned, I did it on the weekend. I would do it every day, but it's because it's not really like what, like sitting here talking to you isn't work. It's like, it's just fun. So if you're interested in something, usually that's going to be the area that you will thrive in and excel in. And so it's trying to shape that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic because, you know, you listen to a lot of people talking about success and, you know, they talk about graft and pushing through all the hard stuff and leaning into what's challenging. And actually what you're saying is listen to the signals, you know, find the tailwinds, find where your own zone of genius is and enjoy that part and don't fight it. And similarly with your team, don't push them into a role where they aren't comfortable, because you'll either end up getting the worst out of them or they'll get frustrated and leave. I think before we were talking about Patrick Lencioni, weren't we, and the book Good to Great, and it talks about first getting them the right seat on the bus, right people, right seat. And right seat for me is a role design which is supportive of their desires and skills, and now in this new expression, in their zone of genius, that's where you're going to get most engagement from people.
Yeah, in my ADHD coaching course, they said that focusing on your strengths is like polishing a poo, which I really like that. Stuck in my head, that expression. But I think it's a good expression because we live in...
Focusing on your strengths or focusing on your weaknesses?
Focusing on your weaknesses, right. Focusing on your weaknesses is like polishing a poo. I liked it because I was like, that is so true. We live in such an odd culture, which is like, what's your learning point? Like, where do you need to improve, etc. But why not just focus on what you're really good at, and then also get other people that are really good at something else, and then you've got a team of people that all complement. Like the person that I work with very closely, her brain works completely differently to mine, but it's so important because she's the one that's like, well, how much is that? She's the one that's like, what are the risks there? I really, really, really wanted to buy a bus recently. I really wanted to buy a bus and drive it around, and we could have like literal ADHD coach. And she was like, no, I wanted to convert the bus, and we could like all drive around in the bus.
Is that not an amazing idea?
Exactly. This is what I was like. I had a vision board, and I was like, "This is a great idea." And she was like, "No." She was like, "We've got so much." I'm like, "We can drive it to schools, and we have people come for coaching, and the ADHD coach, and it can be like, bring people together in like a community." And she was like, "You can't drive a bus.
Well, yeah,
where are we going to keep a bus?"
That's
and
one
I
flaw.
was like,
There's kinks. But
so that's
the
you need a bit of
there.
both. Especially you need a lot of Charlie. Her name is Charlie Champion. She's great. But you need a lot of Charlie, especially once you have got to the stage where it's a bit more like a proper company. Because now, God bless her, me and her are having to wade through the last 3 years of like chaos where I didn't write anything down, but made loads of decisions like that. Like, let's train this. Yeah, we'll train them abroad, whatever. We'll do that. We'll do that. And then you have to kind of wade backwards and figure out.
Yeah.
It the other way.
When I was prepping for this, I came across a new phrase that I was unaware of. Maybe you can shed a bit of light on RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria. Tell us about what is RSD.
Rejection sensitive dysphoria is the experience of extreme emotional pain at real or perceived rejection. And when I first heard about this, I heard about it on a podcast actually, but it is what made me change my mind and be like, oh, maybe ADHD is real. Like maybe it's something that I experienced, because the way that these people were talking about it was like that they said this is what differentiates ADHD from conditions like bipolar and borderline personality disorder, because it's not chemical, but it's triggered by something like your thoughts. It can also cause like such an intense mood swing that and especially when you then combine it with the other aspects of the executive functioning impact of ADHD, which affects bits like motivation, impulsivity, self-awareness. But then you get the answer of, okay, if you have someone that is really, say, emotionally dysregulated, has extreme emotions, and then they're also very impulsive. That's why I would say we're 5 times more likely to take our own lives. And so it can be really, really dangerous and really important. And again, it's not really like the RSD in that it sounds like, oh, you're a snowflake. I remember saying it to my manager that was like, rejection sensitive dysphoria. Like she was like, what on earth are you talking about? And so I really get it. So I do like talking about it a lot because I don't have a manager anymore. But every single person I've ever worked with who's got ADHD is like, yes, that is me. Oh my God. Like it's like they're like, oh, it's life changing. And I know it because that was, for me, I was like, oh my God, that explains why, because before I was diagnosed, I would become really suicidal every day over stupid stuff like not getting a job or like a friend or feeling like there's no hope for me in the world, blah, blah, blah. And then I would wake up fine.
Let me give an example of where this might show up in the workplace. and you give me your reaction.
Yeah.
Okay. So I ask you to work on a research project for a new product that we want to bring to the market, and you spend 2 weeks, working really hard at it. You're really excited by it. You think there's got lots of potential, and then in a leadership team meeting 3 weeks later, after you've sent the report to me, but I haven't responded, I reference it and say, oh yeah, Leanne, that piece of work that we did, we're not going to push ahead with it. It just didn't seem like the right fit. And it's quite flippant, didn't say anything else, hadn't had a one-to-one with you. What would your reaction be?
Oh, triggered by the bad
would that be something that was quite triggering?
Yeah, I think. Well, how would it be for you?
I mean, I'd be quite angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think anyone would be quite angry.
I don't think I'd be suicidal, but I'd be.
I don't think that your average person would be suicidal, but they'd be quite angry in a similar way. And then everyone's got different ways of coping. But for example, I can give you quite a similar-ish experience. So my manager during the pandemic, she said, "Can you research all the things to do with vulnerable people and COVID?" And I was like, okay, like anything in particular? She was like, no, like just everything. And so I didn't know I was autistic at the time. I did research everything. I gave her like 27 pages of all of the data relating to vulnerable people during the pandemic, including all of the deaths, and like worked so hard to find it all. And she just replied to my email and said, "Thanks, Leanne." And I was like, yeah.
And that was it.
Thanks, Leanne. And that kind of thing is really hard to explain because on the outside, obviously, like she said, "Thanks, Leanne," and that's like fair enough, right? But it's like I didn't need to put in that much effort or go to that degree. So and here, if I explain the RSD, it's not really against her, but it's actually against yourself. Like, so I then went down this big hole of being like, why did I do that? Why did I give her 27 pages of information and like get all these people involved and like turn into this huge, massive thing that's actually taken up all of my attention now for the last like week, and then send it to her. And then she said, "Thanks, Leanne." And now I'm annoyed, but I don't really have the right to be annoyed because like she said thanks, like she acknowledged it. And then like I don't even know if it made it into the kind of final report of what it was produced for, but it's like now I understand my own brain. I'm like, It was the lack of like specific parameters, and so my brain will be like, okay, I'll just get all information. But now I understand like, okay, I need the endpoint, or I need to know exactly what someone wants from me and why they want it, and like what is relevant, and like. But that kind of situation used to be really incredibly annoying, but also not one that I was going to like kill myself over, but just annoying. But
did you, when you were working in law, did you tell your manager that you had ADHD?
Yeah.
You did? And do you think that helped?
I don't know that she understood it that well.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't really understand it very well myself.
Do you
either.
encourage people that you work with through your coaching framework to communicate?
I don't encourage it one way or the other, because I think it is such a like, for example, the way I kind of talked about in my old job was that they asked on the first day, "Do you have a disability?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I've got ADHD, but I think it just makes me really productive." And they were like, "Okay." And I was like, "But I do have to get the medication." So they kind of knew about it.
Sure.
But I didn't really know about it either. And again, that's where I think like the ADHD one is also really important with autism and ADHD, because I didn't know I was autistic. And to give you an example here, like one of my most embarrassing moments ever, a colleague used to talk quite loudly in the kitchen all the time where we sat. And one day I shouted at him to shut up, and then I emailed him and said, "No one wants to hear about your weekend." And I only realized when he replied to me, copying in my manager and his manager, being like, "You didn't talk to me in the way of the culture code." And I was like, oh my God. How on earth did I even, like, I didn't even realize that I did that. That is more. So maybe that's a bit of ADHD, but in particular, that autism there is really relevant because, like, I didn't realize how much it was affecting me every single day hearing him talk, which is not like, you know, I obviously shouldn't have told him to shut. It's not, we say it can explain but not excuse. Like, I obviously shouldn't have been like, so I did buy him a plant to apologize, and it was really embarrassing, and I had to avoid him for the rest of my time there. But and it is something that will haunt me forever.
Yeah.
But at least makes a good story in a podcast.
I'm thinking about it from my perspective. If someone in my team had ADHD and I didn't know about it, and I was day in, day out doing something that frustrated them, I would rather know about it.
I think everyone, the thing is that I think that we should hopefully be able to work towards a world where, regardless of whether they have ADHD or not, right? If like you have someone in your team where you were doing something that was really annoying them all the time, like, oh my God, like, I used to sit next to this man that, there's like lines between the desks. Like every time he would come in, some bits of I'm quite messy, and he'd come in and be like, like move it back onto my desk, right? Obviously, so it was quite stressful. So, but it's like kind of, I think workplaces are filled with people that annoy each other because you haven't chosen to be in that space. Yeah. But also the difference with something like ADHD, autism, etc., is that I don't know. Every time I do a corporate talk, I get asked the question, "How do you tell someone that you think they've got ADHD?" And I'm like, usually it's, don't do that, first of all. But second of all, focus on like the person, because if you were only going to change your behavior because someone's got ADHD versus if like you just want to be a person not to annoy the person next to you by doing something you don't even realize is annoying them, it's probably not going to go down that well anyway, because they might not be able to get a diagnosis, etc. And like that's usually the problem with the workplaces right now, and why I don't really have a kind of, I've got a whole book on it called ADHD Works at Work, but I don't really strongly encourage people either way. I really respect this. From a legal point of view, I do say like you're better off to tell your employer always, because it protects you legally, but in reality usually it can lead to more complications, because understandably the managers, etc., they're not like medical professionals or legal experts in disability law. I actually worked in mental health and disability law, so technically I'm actually a disability expert. But at the time, like I didn't even realize that at the very beginning. It was only when I had very specific training on neurodiversity that I was like, oh my God, ADHD can be a disability. So most people don't have that awareness, but often people that have gone to this extreme of getting diagnosed with ADHD, etc., they have really researched it a lot. Like they're like, oh my God, they're terrified. Like I remember telling my manager that I wanted to publish the ADHD book, and I was absolutely terrified, and she did not care at all. she was like, of course you can. I was like, so I can publish it. And she was like, of course you can publish it. She was like horrified that I would think that she would stop me from doing that. So
let's pick up on the point about the legals. We're talking about the Equalities Act. Is that?
The Equality Act 2010. So that is important. And that would be why neurodiversity has become such a big topic at the moment, because this is the difference between, your colleague that is like bullying you, you don't like them, versus your colleague that is saying you've got ADHD and you're an idiot, like because you've got ADHD. Technically, I would say they're both bad, but the law says that bullying is not illegal within the workplace, but harassment and discrimination is, like particularly in relation to disability. And so the Equality Act in the UK says that a person is disabled if they have a condition, health condition, that affects their ability to do normal day-to-day activities, that is long-lasting, essentially, and significant. So if you take the diagnostic criteria of like ADHD, that definitely falls into it, but it doesn't mean that every person with ADHD is necessarily disabled. Because that definition is like on a case-by-case basis. So the only person that can say if someone is disabled or not is the employment tribunal, which takes a long time to get to. But employers, so I talked to the Met Police, their HR, and they were having a real challenge because they were like, we're getting all of these, because you actually also don't need to be, because that's a legal test, not a medical one. Employers are having a real problem right now because people are like on these very long waiting lists, etc. They are wanting support, and they're asking their employer for support, and they're like, no, you're not diagnosed, etc. Or they're really worried about like opening the floodgates. So the police, they've had people come and say, oh, I want like noise cancelling headphones, and they don't have like an official diagnosis, and so the police are like, no, we can't give it to you. And then they're like, oh no, but look, this, I don't need the diagnosis. And then they're like, all right, fine. So they've got them some headphones, and then the people are coming back and saying, no, I want Dr. Dre Beats headphones.
Oh.
And so it's really hard I really feel for them, because it's really hard. Like, and or like the situation I have where I was like really rude to my colleague, like, what do you do if you do have, well, we actually have had someone in our I have people in like the training and stuff a lot as well, but you know, I have people that I've worked with now who are like pretty rude or pretty like no, there's the line between like what's acceptable and what's not, and so many people that are like, oh, but I've got ADHD or I'm autistic, and you're like, well, we all have to kind of like learn to live together.
Yeah.
So it's really tricky for employers, because they can be held legally responsible even if like that person hasn't disclosed like a disability. And it's really hard, especially because like neurodiversity is being so politicized right now, and especially post-pandemic, because a lot of people don't want to go back to the office because they are like neurodivergent, etc., etc. They've figured out that works better for them, but the employers are like, no, because if you don't come back to the office, then we're going to have to tell everyone why you're not back in the office, and then that's going to go down really badly for us, because how do we make... But that's the world that I think we're in, is shifting towards the future where like just let people do what they need to do, like just find some middle point.
You mentioned before that you advise people to tell their employer because then they're better protected legally. Just explain that to us.
So legally, people are really scared to tell their employer, because usually what happens is you'll tell your employer, usually there's no like clear policy anyway for someone to tell process for how they're even meant to tell their employer. So we do have a lot of like templates and stuff on our website, like free templates. But let's say they tell their employer and they say like, I've got diagnosed with ADHD to their manager. There's usually not a policy in place for that manager to know what to do next, to tell HR or wherever. Or, you know, I've worked with people who they might have told HR, but they've said to HR, you're not allowed to tell my manager. So there's all kinds of interesting scenarios. And then what will normally happen typically is that the manager, HR, will come back and they'll say, what help do you want? What do you want from us? And the employee will be like, I don't know. I've just been diagnosed with ADHD. What's available? What's the menu? And they're like, we don't have a menu.
Don't have many, yeah.
And then they're like, well, tell us what you need. And then maybe the employee will be like, oh, well, actually, I would like to, you know, have flexible office hours. And then they're like, no, that doesn't actually fit with our flexible office hour policy. And then it all becomes this big legal bureaucratic mess. Or like, you know, I coached someone who was allowed to have breaks, like focus breaks to exercise, like to go out to the gym in the day and like come back and focus. But they had to book these off a week in advance with the manager. And obviously, like, they don't know when they need these breaks.
Sure.
So it's stuff like that where, like, it kind of doesn't work, and then there's a big problem. But I will often work with people who are in their probation period, or more commonly, people that are in senior leadership, and they really, really don't want to tell their employer because they're like, they're going to push me out of it, or like probation, they'll fire me. And I always remind them that if you tell your employer that you've got ADHD or anything during probation, it means they're going to be far less likely to fire you because then they are stuffed. If they are then they've got to show that it's nothing to do with the fact you have ADHD. So, and that can be really tricky for employers. And also if you're masking and you're trying to like really push yourself beyond what you are able to do naturally during those 3 months. If you're like lying essentially and being like, look, everything is fine, I'm not stressed at all, when actually you're like barely coping, but there may be something really simple that they can do, like giving you written instructions or something. And often that is the case for probation period, because it's so incredibly stressful for people that are neurodivergent. Because for me, every single day I was like, I'm going to be fired. And my colleagues were like, we don't fire people. They were like, they don't fire people on their... I was like, I'm going to be fired. I know it. But like, so I was like, if you do tell them, it's easier in the long run, because anyway, like, that means that in the future, you're not going to feel like, oh, I've not told them for 3 months now, I've somehow tricked them, or like, you're not going to have that anxiety anymore. And like, then they can help you work to the best of your abilities now. So it's tricky because there is no like playbook, and every employer is going to be very different.
I get the impression that the tribunal cases that are happening now are kind of paving the way. You know, it sounds like it's relatively new, and certainly SMEs that, you know, perhaps might have a team of 20 and one neurodivergent employee, and they don't necessarily know. It's all new ground for them. You know, this is a window in time where there's a lot of new knowledge about this topic coming through, and in 10 years it'll be more mature. Policies will be in place, but you know, the way you're describing it, you know, I'm trying to relate it to kind of my experience employing people, and I can see how complicated and challenging that gets really, really quickly. You know, the example you gave of, I'm going to tell HR, but I don't want you to tell my manager. It's a perfectly reasonable request. But then if the manager is doing something which, you know, is triggering that person, which is quite ADHD specific, and later on that comes through from some kind of grievance, or, you know, later in the fact that maybe they haven't met performance standards and it goes through a PIP or whatever, I can see the conflict happening straight away, and how difficult that must be to resolve. Does it all come back to communication?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and that is kind of why I do what I do, because it can literally escalate. The employer tribunal awards as well, they're uncapped. So like, there've been awards for millions. And often in situations that could have been so...
In certain circumstances, though. When it's discrimination, not always. Yeah.
Disability discrimination, so failure to make reasonable adjustments would be uncapped. Like, there was one woman who was the head of HR at Royal Mint, and she literally got... it was a huge, huge award for... She was the head of HR, and she resigned. She'd resigned multiple times. But this time she resigned, and she said, oh, it's because my husband has something to do with her husband. And then I think it was like a month later or so, she came back and said, actually, I've changed my mind. I want my job back. And they said, no, you can't have it back. We've hired someone else and told everyone. And she was like, oh, but I've got ADHD. And they were like, we don't care. And then she sued them and she won because, not because they should have given her job back, but because they should have talk to a lawyer, or they should have like gone through a process to assess, like, okay, do we need to make a reasonable adjustment here?
Right.
They probably could have justified it, but they were like, no, we don't care. So it's all of these kind of things. And also it actually applies from the very beginning of even having a job advert up. If you have someone, like, I work with a lot of people that will ask the employer for like a reasonable adjustment to maybe have a phone call before or something, and the employer's like, no. They have to actually prove why they said no. So equally, there's a guy that he made like £30,000 from just applying for jobs he wasn't qualified for, and asking for like reasonable adjustments and being refused them, and then suing employers for discrimination. But he got kind of caught up in the court. He got got caught and stopped. But that is the position that employers are in, where it's like, you're better off understanding your rights, and like, if you make a policy, then you can understand how to apply the policy. And it does genuinely come down to communication of being like I said to you earlier, when you said, oh, if there's someone that I've got a problem with, like, or they've got a problem with me, is it better that, like, would I want to know if they've got ADHD? It doesn't matter if they've got ADHD, autism, dyslexia, like depression, anxiety, anything, children, like, it's just, it comes down to like being able to talk to the fellow human beings and be like, hello, actually, I'm reflecting this situation and I feel sad. Or you remind me of my mom and this has pained me, or whatever. Or like, you know, I actually really struggling, or I feel like I'm not appreciated, or whatever it is, like, which is so hard for people to have conversations about in the workplace, where it's, I don't know, maybe it's our Britishness or professionalism, but it's so hard to just like be honest, and instead it all comes layered under like.
I think part of it is kind of what you spoke about before, which is the risk of it being repeated back in a tribunal setting. You know, and go, oh, you remind me of your mum, and then later on that gets repeated and twisted, and you go, well, you know, your mum is disabled, and therefore you're telling me that I remind her of someone who's disabled, but I'm not. I have ADHD, and I don't identify as disabled.
There is a good case about that. This woman hired she hired someone that she was like, oh, it was a really beautiful case because he was dyslexic, I think, and her nephew was dyslexic, and she was like, oh, I'm hiring you because of my nephew that's dyslexic, and dyslexic people are so clever, blah, 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 blah. And then I think he asked her some kind of training, and she said no. And then he sued her and won. But it's because, like, it's not, like, the place... But I think it's that what human beings tend to do is we tend to, like, be scared of what is new and different and be like, oh, my God, I need to, like... make something better here. And like say for example, for me, very often I will apologize to people if there's a problem, which doesn't sound like to give you a recent example, we had a situation where I was training people in my course, and I will usually do an example where I'm coaching someone in the course, and I did an example of like an introductory call for someone. And all I knew about them was that they had a job. I didn't know what job, anything. But then at the end I said, okay, presumably you've got income because you have a job. So they're like, well, how much would you pay for coaching? Like, I said that. Anyway, and then like 3 weeks later they emailed and said that they had felt uncomfortable in that setting because the information they'd shared had been used against them. And I was like, oh my God, fuck. I'm like, what information? I was like, I didn't know anything of that. But I immediately went back, looked at it, emailed them, was like, I'm really, really, really sorry. Do you want to have a call? Talked to them, and I was like, I wasn't being like, oh my God, yes, but I'm like, I looked at it and I can see how you might have come to that conclusion. I'm really sorry. I've been really stressed out. Like, I didn't really think of it in that way. You know, are you okay? And then they were like, yeah, they were like, actually, that's all I was going to say, which is exactly what you've just said. And so it's like just apologizing is so easy to do. And that's actually all people really want. It's just to feel like heard and seen and validated and to know they're not making it up in their head. But like, you know, if my manager, for example, when I sent her the 27 pages, if she was like, hello, you know, I realized maybe I should have given you actually the thing of that, but thank you, this is amazing that you've been able to do this. Like, I wouldn't have felt that, like,
yeah.
But it's the hard bit and the scary bit because, like, it's trusting that it's not, but actually, people always say to me, like, oh, studying law must be so good for you in the business, like, you must, the only thing that I know from studying law is how hard it is to sue someone. Like, so that's why I'm like, well, it would take a long time and a lot of effort for anyone to sue anyone. Like, so you're better off, like, and these situations can usually be resolved by having a conversation. Like,
there's one bit of advice which was in there that I want to just pull out because it certainly resonated with me, which was the example you gave about the head of HR at the Royal Mint, and actually if they'd just taken a little bit of advice instead of giving a kind of, no, sorry, if I reflect on HR kind of situations in the past, which I've handled myself, and now looking back, and would I have been better off just getting a bit of a steer, because just because you feel the principle is there, or you know your gut reaction, actually there is a legal framework that goes alongside employing somebody and having an employment contract that is a really important piece of legislation, along with the Equalities Act and the Employee Rights Act and loads of really important pieces of legislation. And it is easy to make mistakes, even if you have best intentions. So yeah, I would say that piece of advice is not normally very expensive. To have a retained good employment lawyer that you're able to pick up the phone to is very, very valuable if you've got any staff at all, I would suggest.
That is literally the best thing. We have found an incredible man called Sam Walkley, and he
shout out Sam
is like really cheap for what he does. He should. I'm always telling him to charge more, but he because we know he's there, any single thing that comes up, I just message him immediately. I'm like, hello, is this okay? Is this bad or really bad? And he is able to give a handle on all of that. So, and that's why I think like these coaching skills are also so useful, because it's about not jumping in and being like, oh my God, I've got a friend that's got ADHD. I know all about this. Like, oh yeah, like I was on a plane once, and I was really stressed out because I was sitting in the middle and next to a bathroom. So I said, can I change? I've got like ADHD and autism, and I'm really stressed out here. And this woman came, the plane stewardess, and she came to the room and she was like, who here's got anxiety? And I was like, I don't have anxiety, I have ADHD. And she was like, come with me. And I was like, all right, off we go. And then she took me to the door of the airplane. And she was like, my daughter's scared of flying. And don't worry, it's going to be absolutely... And she proceeded to tell in front of like the whole plane about what would happen if the plane crashed and the door would open, the slide would come out, and I was like, one, I'm not scared of flying. Two, if I was scared of flying, oh my God, I would be terrified now. Bloody hell. Like... And it's that kind of example, because she was just so uncomfortable even talking about like, oh, autism, like, oh, I don't understand that. She was just like, assumed that she knew what she was talking about. And I was like, I just need to change seat. And then by the time I got back to my seat, someone else had said, I'll swap seat. And I was like, okay, great. And so, but I complained about her, and I did get given a lot of points, thank you to the airline. But nice. That's exactly what I mean. Like, it's like, by just, instead of being like, okay, what's going on? And if that's not possible, like, you can just go and ask someone to change it or whatever it is. But it's a scary bit, because I think also finding a lawyer like Sam who you can go to without being scared, they're going to charge you thousands and thousands of pounds.
Yeah, it's crucial, yeah.
It's weird, but it's like the psychological safety. And I wonder if are you allowed to share any of your experiences? Because I'm like, I would like to know how to avoid these. But I think I think particularly in small companies, and like with ADHD as well, one company I worked with, their founder told everyone he had ADHD on like a kind of retreat, and then half of them all said they had ADHD too. Wow. So then the kind of HR person in that company found me and was like, what do we do? And I went on their retreat and taught them like kind of ADHD coaching skills with each other. But it's really just a difference. But I do think a lot of people in startups are neurodivergent. So it's just being able to work with people, because you might have someone with ADHD but someone else with autism, and their needs might directly conflict. So you're never going to be able to please everyone. Yeah, and that is never a true word said. And I think yes. I think a really good place to leave it. And yeah, thank you so much, Leanne. If you're listening and you're interested, then get on Leanne's LinkedIn, because there's firstly lots of posts, there's lots of signposts to your books and BBC documentary, which for the brain surgeons out there, they'll find it fascinating. They can go and study your brain and give you some feedback. But no, look, thanks on behalf of all of our listeners for coming in and sharing your experience with us. Thank you, and don't be scared of neurodivergence. It's okay. They're all right. They're not going to sue you. Don't worry. Just we're like, I think the best tip I can give someone that is like, oh, what do they do? It's just say like, I'm not an expert in this. Is that okay? Like, I don't know what to say or what to do. Like, but just be vulnerable yourself. Of like, what. Like, I'm here to talk to you about it, but it's really scary to say that. Let's but that's all you need, because the person also doesn't know either, but they might just want to tell you, and then they feel like, oh wow, I can be myself at work, even though nothing has changed. Yeah. But like, maybe nothing has changed. Like, they're still the same person that they were yesterday. So just be nice to everyone would be my general advice. It's cracking advice. Well, I'll try. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Leanne. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Behind the SME. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. If you want to get in touch, you can find our email in the description. Until then, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.